Welcome to Laurier's Teaching Excellence Conversation Series. I'm Mary Wilson, Vice-Provost of Teaching and Learning at Wilfrid Laurier University. And throughout this series, I'll be joined by recipients of the Donald F. Morgenson Awards for Teaching Excellence to celebrate their exceptional teaching practices, learn about their teaching philosophies, and discuss the future of higher education, teaching and learning. I'm also joined today by Adelaide, one of my black labs, who is snoring in the background, unfortunately. Today I'm with Ian Schwartz as well from Laurier's Cooperative Education and Workforce Partnership Department, who received the 2020 Staff Award for Excellence in Teaching and Learning. Ian's work focuses on student success and building the skills and confidence students need to succeed in the co-op program and beyond. Welcome, Ian.
Well, thank you for having me. It's great to speak with you.
It's an absolute delight. So Ian, I know for our co-op students, we're really hoping to give our students opportunity for career exploration, to get some hands-on integrative experience so that they can partner theory with practice, so that they can understand their skill sets and what they really own really well already, and also identify some areas where they might need to focus some additional effort to develop themselves further. And also just to make connections with employers and see what it's like in their chosen field of practice. When you think about all of those goals and opportunities for students, what do you want most for them?
I think when students are coming into a cooperative education environment, a lot of them come in with similar goals in mind, a lot of them that you mentioned, especially career exploration. And there are certain things there that are kind of a natural byproduct of being in this environment. You'll get to see a lot of different types of jobs. You'll have multiple work terms where you can explore different things. But I think a big thing we focus on is ensuring that they're feeling confident and ready. And not just during their time in co-op. I feel like a lot of the fruit that is bore from being in a co-op program usually comes later. It usually comes when you're in your career and you start thinking about being agile in the job market. So, I think that those pieces of being really good with your networking and looking for opportunities to learn what you don't know and to gain that background, absolutely incredibly important while you're in co-op. But it's certainly something that carries through usually for the rest of students' lives. And certainly in my case, being a former co-op student, I've relied on the lessons that I've gained from being a co-op student all the way through to present day, and I'm sure beyond as well.
So when you think about you're talking about the importance of students feeling prepared and comfortable so that they can be present while they're at their co-op placement and really thinking reflectively and integratively about what it is that they're doing and how it applies to their studies and their career aspirations. When you reflect on the sorts of things that you've done to help support them, what do you think is most effective? Like what kinds of supports prepare them best?
For sure. I think a lot of students would think when they're coming into co-op, I'm going to learn how to build a great resume, a great cover letter, I'll interview really well. But one of the challenges as purveyors of programming like this is just understanding students come in with a huge variety of interests and goals. And if you have one set curriculum that literally everyone follows, well, ultimately people will fall through the cracks where maybe they don't see themselves represented very well in the learning that they're about to participate in. And that was something I learned going back to being a high school teacher even, is that every single student is so different and has such different needs and interests. And one of the things we do in our curriculum to help alleviate that is we give students tons and tons of choice. And two ways that we do that is that first, we give them a lot of different types of jobs that they can practice applying to. So when a student comes through the program, they will submit a resume and a cover letter for review. They'll do a mock interview, but we give them a lot of different kind of backdrops to perform those tasks in. So whether they're interested in, cryptocurrencies or CPA, there's a lot of niche types of jobs. There's a lot of jobs that people would call traditional, but we give them the choice. What's important to you? What would you like to see yourself grow in? And then we give them that platform to start developing those skills. And I think when students see their interests reflected in the curriculum, you just see a lot more, dedication to that personal growth. You see that, you see them really commit to the improvement piece and working hard at it. And that's ultimately what we want, is that they constantly improve, to know that it's a journey, and they'll continue to improve over time. The other thing we do in our curriculum, besides our core modules, is we do a speaker series. So we partner with different, on-campus employer community partners, and we co-facilitate or run sessions to help them grow in different areas, whether it is a technical skill like getting some Excel training through Prism resources, or it's a senior student panel who are talking about their experiences in investment banking, or having an employer in who talks about what it's like to work for the public service and what they are looking for in candidates. We try to have a wide net and variety, so that when students select which events outside of the formal classroom to attend, again, they see themselves represented, they see themselves gaining skills that they know will be of value for them. And I feel like when you approach student learning in that way, and giving a lot of different options and having a wide variety of pathways for them to choose from, that they typically will feel more engaged and productive, and hopefully enjoy the programming that we offer just a little bit more.
So that choice is fascinating to me as well, because I imagine for some of our students, it can feel rather overwhelming, particularly if they're uncertain about their program of choice or their prospects in the future. So could you talk about some of the ways in which you build rapport with students to engage them in authentic conversations about what their aspirations are, what kind of problems they want to solve, what kind of work environment they want to be in?
Absolutely. So very early in the programming that we provide for students, we talk for quite a while about the idea of personal branding, job searching, networking, and that kind of career exploration piece. Just based on the data that we collect, I know that a very small number of students who select one pathway when they're doing the resume cover letter review, very few students will actually end up in that area that they were practicing for their first work term. And a part of what we try to do is show them, yeah, you might have your heart set on marketing right now, and that's great. We want to help you prepare for that. But it's also helping students to see that you're not just one thing. You're capable of so many different amazing outcomes, and that there are a lot of different industries where they're really similar to marketing. You just might not be thinking about them in the same lens right now. And one of the things we do is we'll show students word clouds, where we take different job descriptions from functional areas. We'll say, well, look at this analyst word cloud. And these are typical hard and soft skills that you see in these job descriptions. Now look at this marketing one. Do you see how much overlap there is? Do you see how you can be one or both of these things? And so we spend a lot of time showing students, there's a lot of possibilities, and you can be a lot of different things. And not knowing at that moment is okay. Being 19, 20 years old and thinking about the labor market and thinking about your outcomes career-wise, that's daunting. Like, it's early to be thinking about that. It's good to have direction and to do some self-inventorying. What are my skills, and what are the things that I love, and where do I see myself in the future? But it's also to show, yeah, there's tons of possibilities out there, and don't count yourself out for a lot of them. You would be great at a lot of different things, and trying to show them, how to maintain that openness and to be able to approach different jobs, again, that agile way, goes a long way, I feel, in helping them out.
So it sounds to me as though you're talking a lot about those kinds of transversal skills or attributes that I know the Business Higher Ed Roundtable or employer groups, and certainly Laurier as an institution that really wants to educate the whole person, really focus on. So can you talk a little bit about that critical thinking, problem solving, communication, self-determination, how those are developed through these experiential learning opportunities?
Absolutely. And not just in the co-op curriculum. There's a lot of places within a student's experience during their time at Laurier where they will gain these skills as either part of their curriculum, or as part of clubs, or as part of just following their own interests wherever they may take them. And it's neat to work with students to tease out some of those characteristics and qualities that they're gaining through the things they take for granted, like being involved in a case competition, or going to a networking event and having that nerve to walk up to someone and shake their hand and just say, hey, it's great to meet you, I'd love to talk with you about your job. But for me, a big differentiator in what we're doing with our curriculum is giving students the chance to try it. We'll talk about some of the theory and say, this is what, in essence, this is, but that's all you really need to know for now. Let's partner up or get into groups and try this and give students an opportunity to do it. And that way we're incrementally increasing the stakes where, you're meeting a colleague, a friend in the classroom, pretty low stakes, pretty low pressure, and it's just to explore. And then we'll up the stakes a little bit because you'll go to these networking events. You might want to go introduce yourself to this recruiter. So it's a gradual increase in, what students are doing on that communication side and the critical thinking side. What should I talk about with this employer? What kinds of things are they doing in industry right now? And what might be a good starting point for some conversation? So we show them all of those ideas, and incrementally the stakes will increase to the point where they're out there and doing it largely on their own and feel confident in that and feel that they've grown those skill sets to the point where they can go and execute them and make a strong impact wherever it is they're going.
What you're talking about really resonates with me as an example of somebody who's a very mindful educator who is deliberate in what you're trying to achieve with the students, and you look for opportunities in curriculum, but with the individual to try to cultivate that mindset, those skills, to open up that thinking. So can you tell me a little bit about your journey into this nature of educational practice? Like, why the passion for experiential education? Why have you started to focus on this area of educational practice in your career?
Absolutely. So I mentioned earlier that I had my own experience going through the cooperative education program, and I am a graduate from Laurier with a geography major, and I did co-op, and I've kind of been through the gauntlet, and I understand what it is that students go through. And when I think back about my own experience in co-op, it wasn't easy. It's kind of interesting that I've come full circle and I'm coming back and I'm teaching students about this, knowing full well that for me in my journey, it was a struggle. Going through in geography, I had a very niche idea of what I wanted to do and getting into ArcGIS and mapping and everything like that. But I was one of the only students who wanted that. So I know what it's like to come through a program and feel like you're kind of alone and that there's not a lot of people that want to do the same thing that you want to do, and how it can be challenging to carve your own pathway and move towards those goals when it's really just you and maybe a coordinator. So in thinking about that, I was super fortunate. I had an incredible coordinator when I was in co-op, Colleen Myronic, who I think is now at the University of Guelph, but she was super supportive, and the check-ins and individual appointments. And it just showed, I'm not sure if I would have gotten there if it wasn't, especially before my first work term, her persistence with me and her checking in and showing that care. And I think when you feel like you have someone in your corner to vouch for you and to help, develop these ideas and, from going from brainstorming to an action plan and what exactly it's just going to look like. No, just through my experience, I know how valuable that is. And, even though we have a lot of students in our program, I'd like to think that we have an open door policy to those conversations, and that when students need that support and want to, talk about those growth opportunities, that they do it. I think the other component of all this is I love the experiential learning space just for what it is in terms of not having a sage on the stage approach, but a much more collaborative learning environment. I learned so much just from the students that I work with, whether it's, this is a totally new job and I've never heard of it before, but let's work at this and let's get you there. Well, that increases my knowledge of how the job market works, which is great. But even then, you learn so much more about what students are currently going through, and especially in the last couple of years, been very, very challenging. And so speaking with them and doing that one-on-one support and mentoring, it gives you such a good vantage point as to what should you teach everyone. Maybe we should be talking about imposter syndrome as a greater group and not just looking at this with individual students, because it seems to be a very common issue with this cohort. So in terms of experiential learning, I just love this space because you get to see the product, you get to see the students engage with the information and then produce something, and you can help them with that end product. What can we refine here? What can we make better? What went well and what didn't? I love those conversations. And it just shows that, experiential learning in the co-op space is a really good home for me.
I love it. A lot of what you're talking about is consistent with an area of reading that I've been engaged in recently around pedagogies of care. And the authors that are writing into the space speak a lot about the power of having really productive but protected challenges for students, that students do tend to thrive when we set the expectations high, but that we provide them with the support and the network that they need to navigate that, and that we scaffold them into it so that they're able to make those transitions successfully. It sounds like that's a lot of what you do in your orientation to supporting the students through their co-op placements. Co-op, I think, works really brilliantly well when it is strongly integrated into the degree experience for students. Can you talk a little bit about your perspectives on how to situate co-op experiences within the broader curriculum in a way that really is consequential for our students? Are there some particular features of successful integrations that you've come across?
Well, certainly in working within our department, the broader department beyond co-op, there is a branch of work integrated learning where we have staff that help faculty members either incorporate an active learning scenario using, a real life situation and real employers or real, community situations. And there's also a separate going into the workplace and going and having that experience there and doing shorter placements, aside from co-op. So co-op is a pretty defined thing. Like a lot of students, people think about it like an internship. It's 4 months. Kind of for today, we'll call it it's something like that. But there's so many more ways than co-op that in the the more formal academic setting, students can get a taste of what's going on out there. And, it can, case competitions and things like that, I know are very popular, and that's great. And I think we absolutely need to keep capitalizing on that because it's so great to be able to market those experiences for students when they're going out in the workforce. But there's other ways where we can incorporate work integrated learning into curriculum and have it, be this crescendo of we're learning theory and we're learning about what this is like. But now we're going to see it, and you're going to do it, and you're going to have a great time, hopefully, and you're going to help refine your career aspirations as a result of it. So, absolutely. And I think that there are ways beyond co-op, but still in the work integrated learning sphere that, getting students more hands-on with what's going on out there is phenomenal. And what came back to me as well was one of my favorite experiences from my undergrad was in, I believe it was our hydrology course. We were taken in second year out to the Grand River in hip waders with instrumentation, and we're measuring water flow. And I mean, you never forget that. You never forget doing it. You never forget it. You'll remember some of the theory, you'll remember some of the equations, and that's great. And I think that comes back to you when you need it. But to be able to say, I've done that, and here are some of the things I learned about that experience, I just think that form of learning is phenomenal. And, they're things that will last with students for so long after the fact.
So that reflective component where you are looking back at the consequence of that experience and what it meant to you as a student, what can we do to really support that happening in each individual that engages in these opportunities? Like, what do you imagine to be the important instructions, directions, opportunities that we provide for students so that they can pause and think about why it mattered that they were out in hip waders in the middle of a stream.
I think that it's a good starting point to build positive reflective practices within curriculum itself and to make time and space for it. I think that a lot of times things move very quickly when you're in your academics and you're learning a theory and it's okay, great, we're done this, we're going to move on to this now. And sure, there may be some scaffolding, there may be some continuity between what you just learned and where you're going. But to be able to just have dedicated time and space for reflection and pause, and to be shown how to do that reflection really well, asking difficult questions like, what am I going to do with this? Now that I know this, what new questions do I have? Where can I move forward? Having this knowledge, what else do I want to know? Making room for that is very healthy. Certainly when we do the curriculum for the fundamentals course, within practically every module, there is a moment of, okay, we've talked about this, can you try it? Or now that we've gotten to the finish line, where are some gaps, or where are some things that we as a co-op department, where do we need to perhaps grow or add more value or more content? Or what do you think you're going to do now that you have the information that you do to move forward really positively? Is there something that you're going to fill a gap with? When we do our work term reports during work terms, one of the exercises we have students do is reflect on the learning goals that they set for themselves at the beginning of the work term. And they'll write some reflection about, I set this goal, here's how things work towards the work term. But the real bread and butter for me is, so what's next? If you met that goal, what is your next step? If that goal didn't happen, what are you going to do about it? Is there an action that needs to happen? And it's nice to be able to do that on work terms, especially because it's setting them up for what maybe their next work term is. And it starts getting the juices flowing about, I'm about to go through recruitment again, because that's the nature of co-op, is this kind of moves quickly. You're in one co-op term, and then as soon as you're back to academics, you might be getting ready for your next one. But making that dedicated space for, all right, so let's talk. How did that go? What is your next course of action here? And, very anecdotally, I find that students going for their first work term, it's a lot of loose ends. It's a lot of, I'm not really sure. And it is curious how, as you get into your second, third work term, they're not that much farther along. We're only a half a year older, maybe. But the perspective of what am I doing next? Those questions seem to get easier and easier as time goes on. The decisiveness of, okay, I've seen this and I want to see this now. And seeing that light bulb shining even brighter is really affirming. And it shows that maybe we are asking a lot of good questions, or maybe students are just phenomenal at getting from that uncertainty when they're first starting co-op to you're only halfway through, but whoa, it seems like you're pushing the right way. And certainly by the time they get to the third co-op term or graduation, I find a lot more students are comfortable with where am I heading.
I think you're onto something there with asking a lot of really good questions, because I don't think that we can assume that our students really know how to reflect effectively, and that does require some coaching and teaching to be able to get beyond that kind of surface or superficial engagement with their experiences, to build over time a more critically analytical or comparative analysis of what they have experienced, what they've learned, where their passions lie, where they're able to integrate or apply the knowledge that they're learning in their courses, and sort of start to pull together all of those threads that help to inform their decisions about what they want to do professionally subsequently. We've been talking a lot across the Laurier community about the future of work and the future of learning. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about the future of co-op and the future of teaching from your perspective.
All right. So a few things that we are working on is providing more international context when we're teaching some of our courses. We do have a large contingent of students who are visa students, where the assumption that going into a professional workplace in Canada is a straightforward process we know a lot better than that. And we know that there's a lot of situations that might be novel and might take some getting used to. So we're working hard with on-campus partners to help update some of the curriculum and help patch some of those gaps and make sure that students coming from wherever, they're coming to join us at Laurier and going into the work community, that they're feeling ready and that they're feeling prepared. So that's one thing that we're working on. Certainly the speaker series, we're continuing to grow this year. Being online, we saw a massive increase in programming. I remember back in the summer when we were still getting used to what COVID was, I remember feeling this anxiety that how are we going to do speaker series? Like we can't have speakers in person. And then the number of sessions we were able to run doubled because suddenly being online and being able to have conversations remotely was super convenient and time saving and much more, convenient for everyone involved. And now we're growing into this phase of what do we need to talk about? What are some things that we're missing that we can continue to add in here? I think what we do naturally in curriculum very well is thinking about being an agile worker and knowing that where you're working now is not likely where you're going to end up for the rest of your life. And certainly as the job market becomes a little bit more fluid and different opportunities kind of evolve depending on global situations, well, we've got employers who are being very malleable and flexible. And I think the more flexible a student can be to understand where changing needs are and be able to market themselves well, not just for those jobs, but as someone who can be nimble and can learn on the fly and be really good at adjusting to changing conditions are becoming really popular with employers. But in terms of our curriculum, I think even more choice is amazing. Getting more opportunities in our classroom where we can show students what things are like. We've started undertaking a spotlight program where we feature senior students and recent graduates who have come through the co-op program, and we make little one-page PDFs like profile biographies where we give them tons of free reign to just talk about what their industry is like and what their pathway was like and what, explain it like I'm 5. What do I need to know about this industry? And we really want to grow that because we want students to more easily identify themselves in either curriculum and or, the people who have come before them and know that there's folks out there that they can ask questions to and learn, what the pathway, what the right pathway might be for them. So those are a couple of areas that we're focusing on. I'm certainly thinking about, the hybrid environment and how what we did in person was so different than what we did this past year online. And what's the right middle ground? What are some of the things we can be doing online? Should we be doing mock interviews virtually from now on? Or should we be meeting people in a dedicated interview space? It's a tough question because you kind of want students to be ready for both of those. Do we have the time to get through 700 students doing 2 versions of a mock interview? That'll be challenging, but maybe if they want to do a second one basis, we can do that. So it's thinking about what went really well this year. That's kind of a weird thing to think about, but what can we take from being in this COVID environment that will add a lot of value to how we teach students moving forward? And it is exciting to think, a year, 2 years out, what is this experience of being in the fundamentals course and being in a co-op program going to be like? Because I think it's going to feel different than what it currently is, but I think it's going to feel better. I think it's going to be a better product in the end and training regimen for those students.
Ian, there's such consequential work coming out of your area, and it's so good to know that you and your team are deliberately preparing our students for that kind of self-directed, agile career path that so many of us now have. But it can feel daunting when you're in your undergraduate and you really don't know what you're going to be able to do, much less what you want to do. So it's so great that that resource exists for our students. Can you tell our audience how they can get in touch with you and your team?
For sure. So you can reach out to me directly at ischwartz, ISCHWARTZ at WLU.ca. You can reach out to co-op at wlu.ca for a more general reach out, especially if you're interested in hiring a co-op student or want to learn more about how our programming works. We can direct you to the right person there. And yeah, I would say drop into the co-op office, but maybe not for a little while, but certainly when things are back to, our live and in-person ways. We have a lovely little facility with great staff, and we would love to chat about co-op and help people better understand what it is we're up to.
Well, Ian, I really want to thank you for joining me in conversation today. It's so interesting to hear about how co-op education is evolving, the curriculum that you're developing and delivering for our students, and how consequential it is for the nature of the Laurier experience for our students. So thank you very much for joining us to celebrate teaching excellence and student success today. I hope that others will join me again for the next conversation as I continue to celebrate our award recipients and highlight exceptional teaching at Laurier. Thank you.